Welcome to the first episode of Speakwell Partners 12 Minutes to Mastery webcast. I'm Charlotte Dietz.
And I'm Barbara Roach.
And we're launching monthly webcasts to focus on the critical components of powerful presentation. We'll offer insightful nuggets to help you up your communication skills, all in the time it takes to stand in line in Starbucks. Perhaps that's where you are right now.
Oh, and if you are, I'll take a venti black iced tea. All right, well, let's start the primetime clock here.
Well, that's great. Today's topic is how to use data to enhance the power of your message. Data can dazzle.
And it can distract. And we've all sat through those presentations, haven't we, where the data display was unclear or cluttered or fuzzy, devoid of meaning. And mostly it was just a set of numbers plugged into the default PowerPoint template that really should have been left behind in the last century.
When displayed well, data creates a picture for your audience to see important information. It allows your audience to see something they might not know or even expect, and it enhances your credibility as a speaker.
So true. Now, to get that credibility, why is data display so hard?
Well, because we're also overloaded. We are drowning in data. And the facts are we're consuming much more visual information every day than we did in the past. The statistic cited most often is that we're processing today 5 times the amount of daily visual dosage than people were 30 years ago. What this means is that you as a presenter have to cut through the clutter and noise for your audience, which can be difficult in data display because most people tend to have the more is better mentality. So, Barbara, let's show a few examples of what we see all too often.
Okay. Speaking of the last century, I assume we don't have to tell you that pastels are not your friend. And clearly this presenter from a couple of years ago was trying to create some sort of flow chart, and maybe we were supposed to follow some sort of yellow brick road to a conclusion. I'm not sure what that is because this obviously doesn't work.
At all.
Yeah.
And here's another example of a presenter who took advantage of all the bells and whistles offered in PowerPoint, but
yeah.
Let's face it, it's just confusing all of us, not enlightening us. I want to run, not walk from this slide, and honestly, I don't even know what the point is here.
Yeah, and the other problem that we all have as presenters is, remember, anytime you put a slide up on the screen, the human eye must try to read it. And then when we can't read it, we're going to give up and we're just going to go right to our Instagram feed, and you've lost us for the rest of the presentation.
By the way, never use 3D in your data display. Just don't do it.
Right.
Because it's another example, as these two are of presenters falling victim to what we as Speakwell Partners call the Alice in Wonderland trap, which is,
if you don't know where you're going, then it doesn't much matter which way you go. Because data dumping is something that we see professionals do everywhere, in an everyday, like Monday morning meeting catch-up, updates, project pitches, keynotes, anywhere. And our advice is stop making your audience do all the work to find the message hidden in that haystack. It's your job as a presenter to create meaning for each slide.
And that's hard to do. We recognize that. And that's why we love this graphic from the Advanced Media Institute at UC Berkeley, because it's just such an easy way to remember the pathway to getting to your point and to make it powerful. You have to dig into the data first. You have to examine it from different points of view and really try to find, through the filtering process, what is the most important message. Once you have that, then you think about how you're going to visualize that message for your audience, and hopefully you're going to construct it in a really fascinating and interesting narrative or storyline. So, Barbara, let's look at an example of how we might go through this.
Okay. So this is a slide from a presentation where a consultant was trying to advise a bridal company on where to put their marketing dollars, and it was information gathered over about 10 years. And we know after the fact that the point was to discuss the difference between a Facebook ad, perhaps, or a Pinterest, and where should the client put their dollars.
And there's nothing visually compelling about this existing slide, so let's take it to the next level and see how we might advance the meaning in it. And obviously the first thing they do, just by putting this color here, we see what we're differentiating between Facebook and Pinterest. And that's interesting and well done. And I see, wow, twice as much an average order size from Pinterest. So that's great to know too. But one of the limitations of a bar chart is that it really is a summary snapshot of a moment in time. So if I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, is this the best way to display the information that's going to help me make the most important strategic next step decisions? We think not. Barbara?
Nope. It turns out that most of us are using bar charts and pie charts because they're the simplest ones to create, when in fact there's a better choice. So this is another place where, yes, it does take time, but it's time that will be well used, because if you pick the right chart type, you're going to get your message across. In this case, an area chart creates not just that moment in time, but it shows us this trend line where if this keeps going, then you know that perhaps putting your dollars into Pinterest will pay off.
Fantastic. The trajectory becomes really clear, and the Chief Marketing Officer has a vision for how to move forward from here, from our point of view. So these deeper dives are what really create meaning for the audience, and certainly for this presentation they did to this bridal organization. So taking these deeper dives, avoiding analytical errors, understanding that it's easy to skew data or present it not quite right to get the message across. And happily, in order to do that, and in doing so, there's just so many books and expert guidance. Here's a few that we refer to, which we recommend. They'll also be posted on our freebies on our website. You can also find just excellent webinars about data display and a wealth of material in SlideShare. So we recommend that you do the research and work to really get to the next level.
Great. Now you've done all that work, let's talk about how you're going to depict that data that you've just filtered and gotten it to its bare essence. And we love this slide because it shows all the ways in which the human eye works so brilliantly. And in a tenth of a second, the human eye can pick up things like length and width. It can pick up form and pattern. It can pick up texture, color. And for example, in this slide, you have the vase and then the two faces. We can pick up both of those. And then over on this right-hand image, look at on the left-hand column. If I asked you to count the 9s, you would have trouble. But if I just used color, you can pick up instantly where the 3 9s are located. And there is a term for this, which is the wonky term is pre-attentive processing. But one of our favorite versions of it is what's called presence versus absence. Presence being a much better feature than absence. So if I asked you to find the 3 circles with the green dash, you could find it quicker if there were only 3 with the green dash and all others were just the blue circles, versus finding a blue circle amidst all the ones with a green dash. And see how much easier it is to find on the left? And that's called presence versus absence. So think about how you can make it easier for your audience to see what's on the screen.
Exactly. I just love all this stuff. And we want to use this inherent visual skill that, in a tenth of a second shows what we need to see. It's just really great examples of that.
That's right.
So now that you know about pre-attentive visual issues, let's talk about some do's and don'ts with the kind of charts you're going to use. And our first pronouncement is, please don't use charts with food names, and there's a good reason why. So let's look at this pie chart. Very clever little visual, but in the end, it's very hard for us to parse exactly the size of these pieces of pie relative to each other. When there's 2 or more factors in a pie chart, it's just difficult to assess. To me, that pumpkin pie looks like the biggest piece, but if I use a bar chart, it really lets me see that actually pumpkin pie is the 3rd largest slice there, and apple is the largest slice of the pie. So don't use pie charts, especially when there's more than 2 factors, because it's really hard for your audience to distinguish. And the same goes for using donut charts. Those are just pie charts with holes in the middle, so no pie charts.
And moving on to more food, we will look at the infamous spaghetti chart. This was a presentation by military leaders speaking at the Pentagon to describe the Afghan insurgency, and it went viral because even General McChrystal couldn't understand it, who said if we could understand this chart, we'd win the war. And just to quote Edward Tufte, who's one of our references on the previous slide, there are many true statements about complex topics that are too long to fit on a PowerPoint slide. So stay away from food-type charts. Now, let's look at a potential new version of organizing your data. Now, we know it takes a long time to create an infographic, but it is well worth your time because then you can walk through each section. And yes, this particular sample that we got offline does have a pie chart, but since there's only two elements to compare, it works pretty well. And there are many infographic templates online that you can get for free even, and they're well worth your time because it's easy to walk through, and I can grasp your message.
That's great. Well, not only is your audience's prime time clock ticking when you're presenting to them, and especially presenting important data, but apparently right now so is ours. So when we work with clients, we follow the data filter visualized story flow that we showed you earlier because it's just a very simple way to walk through the process of uncovering what the message is, finding the right medium for the most powerful impact. And we can do this with you too.
Absolutely. And let's just wrap up here by reminding you of the most important takeaway, which is this. If there's too much complexity in your visual display, I'm going to have a hard time understanding it, and therefore you've lost me. And your audience then is distracted and won't try anymore to figure out what your meaning is. So once you've reduced the complexity, now it's time to tell your story. And that's going to be the focus of our next episode, Storytelling with Your Data.
Love it. So we look forward to seeing you in November.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.